Hello, you're watching Context and I'm Orkan Amashov here. What had been vigorously circulating on the grapevine has now been officially confirmed. President Aliyev of Azerbaijan and Prime Minister Pashinyan of Armenia are set to meet in Abu Dhabi on the 10th of July. The very fact of the meeting is in itself of considerable significance, of course. The surrounding context demands equally careful scrutiny, and whatever may emerge from this meeting, if not immediately, then in due course, will merit close and deliberate examination. Both President Aliyev and Prime Minister Pashinyan are on a working visit to the United Arab Emirates and are expected to hold their own individual bilateral talks with Sheikh Mohammed ibn Zayed Al Nahyan, the President of the United Arab Emirates. Initial reports suggesting that such a meeting between President Aliyev and Prime Minister Pashinyan might take place by the end of July in Dubai first surfaced around a week ago, with the Middle East eye lending weight to the possibility. Despite the absence of official confirmation until the very last moment, the prospect had been treated as more than plausible, indeed almost certainty. And joining me now to discuss this very important meeting is Ahmed Alili, Director of the Caucasus Policy Analysis Center. Ahmed, what a great delight to welcome you in the studio.
Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to be here with you.
Thank you very much indeed. So this information, this speculation had been vigorously being circulated in the media for the past 7 days. We took it very seriously. We were not entirely sure, but official confirmation was made today. The first two fundamental linchpins. The first one is location and the timing. What's about the location first?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I believe that for the last 1.5 weeks, the WhatsApp groups where the experts would discuss most of the issues. It's full of discussions about the possibility, and I believe that there were two issues that everybody wanted to find answer for, and one of them is about that will there be a meeting, and will it be in the Middle East, and also the second issue is about the possible like the American presence alongside the Yezer corridor. So these two issues, I believe that was the main, they were the main topics of the discussions for the last 2 weeks, and I believe that now we have answer for the very first of them, and this is about that the venue and the time of the meeting, but also we are looking forward to what extent American presence is back to the negotiation process. There are certain rumors now that the old rumors are back, and there is a new rumors that there is still Witkoff is behind all of these issues, and the venue being Middle East, it's kind of like something closer to Mr. Witkoff, and I believe it kind of creates a certain hope that now Trump administration they are engaged with this process in a new way, and there will be much more progress in the process, because last time I believe that there were certain progress in the process, like the Biden administration, they could take process to a certain place, but they had left very short period of time, and I believe that everybody knew that Trump administration is coming, so that's why nobody wanted to give this credit to the administration that's supposed to leave White House. Now it's a new administration in White House, so that's why it's time to give credit to them, and that's going to establish quite a strong foundation for the cooperation for the next 4 years. So President Trump, I believe, yesterday also Secretary Rubio, he mentioned all of those achievements that Trump administration made in the last couple of months, and they're looking for a new achievement, and that's supposed to be Armenia-Azerbaijan peace process. I see that they have a great hope for the process, and I believe that we can share the same optimism.
So in terms of location and timing, in terms of location, one of the key arguments presented amongst the Azerbaijani analysts was that United Arab Emirates is a sort of third country. It doesn't have any particular geopolitical interest as such. It's not France, it's not United States, it's not Turkey. And you see the connection with the US, connection with Witkoff and his functionality as a peace envoy, and also timing. Yes. In terms of timing, you see the beginning of the Trump administration's proactive involvement in Azerbaijani Armenian peace process. Let's move on to the subject revolving around the substance of the talks. So the draft peace agreement has been finalized. As of 13th of March, we have an agreement which can be signed. It can be at least initialed, but there are extra treaty, of course, circumstances related to OSCE Minsk Group and also Armenian constitution. What are they going to discuss specifically, you think? What do you make of the substance, prospective substance of the meeting?
Okay, about timing, I believe that we were expecting that once Trump administration is done with the negotiation process with Russia, there will be much more resources that they can allocate to new directions. And frankly speaking, I was expecting it to be like that month and 2 months, I was sure that it's going to take place somewhere in the late May. So that was my expectation.
It's a bit belated.
Yes, so that is why. But we saw that there were so many moments then it was Mr. Trump losing his hope about President Putin agreeing on certain issues. There were so many ups and downs in the process, but I believe that this is also one of the signs that now Trump administration, they believe that they are done with the Ukraine process. Now it's time to move on.
And you think that will allow them actually to ascribe greater deal of interest and importance to what's happening in this region?
Yeah, exactly. So that's my point. Regarding the substance, what they are going to talk about, I believe that it's the very first contact, right? Even those unconfirmed reports about Mr. Witkoff's travel to Baku and the issues they discussed, there are expectations that there will be series of meetings. So I would say that the first meeting, it might be bringing back the positive vibe in the process. Because we had the positive vibe in the process between December 2023 up until November 2024. Yes. Armenia delegation did not take part in COP29.
Although what was attained on the 7th of December, joint declaration.
Yes, that was the beginning.
Was almost day after the visit from the United States, although that process was bilateral.
Exactly. But that was the beginning of the bilateral process. So, but then you would see that November, December, January, it was like a time period. Basically, there was no information. Although President Aliyev made a TV interview like that, and there was there were quite strong messages toward Armenia in that interview, and we saw that starting from the end of January 2025. Prime Minister Pashinyan, he started sending certain positive messages about the possibility of getting rid of OSCE Minsk Group, changing constitution, and other issues that Azerbaijan was concerned about. So it means that there were certain positive elements in between March and January and March 2025, but they were not enough to relaunch the meeting series between the leaders. So this is the very first meeting, and so that is why, regardless of the substance, regardless of what they are going to talk in the room, I believe that this is going to be a beginning of something positive, and after a long time that we haven't witnessed any meeting.
So it's a proper bilateral meeting. It's not a meeting on the sidelines of another congregation. It's not a Tirana meeting.
Exactly.
It's not even the meeting that took place in October 2022, which was also on the sidelines.
Exactly.
It's a proper bilateral meeting.
Yeah. So that is why it's a milestone meeting. I believe it might turn into something bigger. But we expect that there will be certain positive developments, especially there are hopes that certain elements regarding Zengezur corridor and other issues, they were resolved during the Prime Minister Pashinyan and President Erdogan's meeting that took place a couple of weeks ago. Yeah. So there were elements that, like the self-assurance that we are witnessing, that Prime Minister Pashinyan, he acts in a more, let's say, he believes in the process much more. He wants to establish more ties with Turkey, and that means that there should be more progress with Azerbaijan.
Do you read much into the fact that presently, in mid-summer, both Azerbaijan and Armenia have their own challenges with Russia? Azerbaijani-Russian tensions had been escalating for some time. They had been in a crisis mode since 25th of December 2024. they had particularly escalated after the latest violent raid in Yekaterinburg.
Yes.
Looks like now we are sort of entering de-escalation period. I'm not entirely sure what does de-escalation mean at present, but of course the crisis mode in general will continue for some considerable time. Armenia's got its own challenges, internal, the government-church confrontation. There's a talk about Russia trying to instill its own man. So this is also part of the backdrop.
Of course, I believe that we can also talk about the Iran-Israel war, like how it affected the regional context, right?
Yeah, the aftermath of the Iran-Israel conflict, because we were discussing this is a testing time for the region. What will be its direct impact on the region and also the dynamics between Azerbaijan and Armenia?
Absolutely. So I believe that those processes that takes place in the north of the region and in the south of the region, that creates a strong urge to resolve all the regional problems, create certain regional platform, advance with the regional integration. So, and I believe that in this sense, Baku and Yerevan, they share the same security concerns, right? So there are certain understanding that there should be certain elements that unites Baku and Yerevan and Tbilisi at the same time, so that they can have a unified front against external threats. So I believe that the changing context, like you mentioned, the development taking place with Russia. So I say that we should take into account the developments taking place between Israel and Iran. That means that in the northern and the southern borders of the region, we have sources of instability, regardless of how it will develop in these conflict zones, right? Russia might have an upper hand in a war with Ukraine. That's a totally different scenario. Russia might become weak, and then it means that those regional elite in North Caucasus, they will have more vocal voice on certain issues. So that's also might create a certain instability. And the same thing also in Iran. So we don't know when the central public administration institution, when they get weaker, what will be the relations between various ethnic groups or religious groups in Iran, right? So it's also source of instability. Absolutely. So these factors, they create certain urge that Baku and Yerevan, they should do cooperation on hard power issues, on hard topics. And I believe that changing context, that sometimes the context in South Caucasus changed so fast that some opportunities might get, faded away.
You talked about the opportunities and window opportunities. Zaur Shiriev, I interviewed him last time on Caucasus Now together with Pashinyan, and he wrote a very interesting article, I think it was published late May for Foreign Affairs, saying that there is a new regional order in the making, and if the peace treaty between Azerbaijan and Armenia is not signed as soon as it is humanly and realistically possible, it would risk the emergence of new regional order. What do you make of that proposition? That Azerbaijani side, as far as I understand, is saying that we have de facto peace, the peace agreement is ready, we have to make sure that all the necessary elements are sorted out. So let's not precipitate things, all in good time. But there's another school of thought. Of course, Zaur's article conveys a couple of messages. It should be taken into account in its full holistic entity. It seems to suggest that there is a regional order in the making, and Azerbaijan is a sort of a rule maker here, because the Azerbaijan's victory in 2020 and 2023 are at the heart of this new order. But if we don't sign a deal with Armenia, there is a risk that that regional order may not actually emerge.
Okay. The thing is, regional order is is emerging regardless what we do, because the context is changing super fast. So that is why I believe that even we establish certain agreement between parties, we shouldn't be sure that we establish regional order, the new regional order is out there.
So regional order is not just a peace deal, it's something deeper than that.
It's much deeper, so I believe that it's something that we have to like that. Again, the context, the geopolitical context is changing very fast. Are we sure that there will not be second round of the Iran-Israel war?
There's no question. Some people are saying it will happen, second round.
Yeah, sure. So that is why I believe that this is a room of opportunity to sign that deal, but at the same time, after signing that deal or reaching agreement on certain issues, that the agreement is going to be signed in 1 year or 1.5 years, etc. So after that, yeah, I believe that there will be much more stable intra-regional, let's say, construction, that the parties can build their cooperation based on that security construction that established by this series of the meetings. But at the same time, I would say that there is Azerbaijan also, we see how Azerbaijan is ready to be source of resources for Armenian sovereignty and for Georgian sovereignty. So this means that the regional configuration that also emerges because Azerbaijan is committed to the regional integration, and Azerbaijan wants both Tbilisi and Yerevan to reach certain degree of the sovereignty that...
Would you say that Azerbaijan genuinely interested in seeing a more sovereign, independent Armenia, less reliant on Russia?
Absolutely. I believe that there was even an article in Azerbaijan media about that issue. We see that Azerbaijan is closely watching what's happening inside of Armenia, and if there is a certain revanchist forces coming back, so Azerbaijani behavior toward Armenia would be...
What's your reading of the situation there in Armenia? Internal battle seems to have been escalating for some time. It looks like Prime Minister Pashinyan himself is interested in escalation. It looks like a part of the pre-election battle. Pashinyan recently, when he was interviewed by Le Monde, said that those people who cannot afford coming to power by legitimate means can only resort to this sort of means. What do you make of the situation underway there?
Well, there are too many determinants to connect the dots, frankly speaking. But there are several issues that we have to take into account. And one of them is that Prime Minister Pashinyan is a political animal. He's a survivor. He has survived in environment that nobody expected to survive, right? After losing Karabakh, after all of those developments that took place, he keeps surviving, which is quite I would say that as a politician, his experience in the last 7 years also kind of creates certain expectation that he can survive this crisis with the church also. At the same time, we have to be very, I believe that the one thing is very important, that to what extent Pashinyan still can fill the streets. So again, he's in office for 7 years. It means that his understanding of the streets might not be that...
He's no longer the man of 2018.
Yes, exactly. So that is why, to what extent he can feel the mood in the street. So I believe that move against church was quite a bold move. Can he sustain this kind of behavior in the future? Is it sustainable to be against the church all the time? I don't expect that it is like the one-time thing. It's not a church is not a let's say one opposition representative that you win over that person and he or she is gone. Church is a much more fundamental element of the Armenian society, and he challenges that group of people, which is quite an important moment. So for me right now, the question is that he and his team, to what extent they kept their ties to the general public.
Interestingly enough, I mean, Onik James Krikorian, a couple of years ago, wrote a piece wherein he argued that although Pashinyan back then used to sort of pull the strings in the country, there was back then, there still is, there still is one portion of Armenian society, which is a majority, which does not particularly like Pashinyan, but also hates former leaders like Kocharyan and Sarkisyan. But if Pashinyan fails, that proportion of the society may choose another person to follow, and that person may potentially defeat Pashinyan by 2026. What do you make of that?
Well, the thing is, Pashinyan and the process taking place around him, there is those standard logic that once revolution takes place and certain people gets to the top, certain people gets to the bottom. So this is very natural way of how the process should develop after each revolution. But the war in Karabakh in 2020 kind of disturbed the whole natural flow of the events. So that is why we don't know what kind of resources is out there for Pashinyan, for his team, etc. And I expect that, like, usually there should be some people who win certain, like the favor within the system and becomes like that second or third persons in the system, and they can, let's say, if leader doesn't behave, they can, let's say, take over that person, right? But we are witnessing that Pashinyan and his personal favor is still quite important factor for Armenian society, meaning that once he fires some person, that person is not that important anymore, right? So it means that the importance of each person in the system, in his power structure, they are very dependent on the popularity of Nikol Pashinyan. So I mean that's not normal. That's supposed to be in a different way, because the natural flow of the events should have shaped certain issues, but the natural flow of the events, they are disturbed. The Karabakh War 2020, it changed everything. So that's why we should not approach this case as a standard case. And the fact, it's very strange fact that Pashinyan is losing approval ratings, right?
Yes, indeed.
Each time he gets less and less and less. Last time when I checked, it was 9%. So, but nobody knows who gains those approval ratings.
Yeah.
He's losing them, and somebody else supposed to gain them, but nobody gains them, right?
Yep.
So this shows that from a political science standpoint, it's very unique case. Yes. Again, and I believe that all of those issues, the natural flow was disturbed by the 2020 Karabakh War, and then we have to either believe in Pashinyan that he is going to survive or not. So that's the top.
There are quite a number of things to discuss, Ahmad, but one more point about connectivity and American presence. We remember, you and I, we remember that United States of America, for all the criticism that the Azerbaijani government analyzed and so forth, levied against them in 2023, 2024, played their own constructive role within the Azerbaijan-Armenian peace process.
Yes.
We remember September 2022. We remember the way Azerbaijan and Armenia recognized each other's territorial integrity in Prague. Yes. We remember American involvement prior to that in September, those meetings taking place in Washington. We remember that document called Washington Document, its principles. We remember how back then, when there was no bilateral process, I talk about early 2023, when Brussels process was on the verge of collapse, Americans interfered. We remember Blinken initiated meetings. So there were very positive things about the United States of America. But now, in mid-2025, two questions in one. How do you think they will be determined to remain proactive? And number two, connectivity. The construct there is very clear. Azerbaijan wants unobstructed passage. How do you see the future of the compromise there?
Well, it's
and it's very complicated.
I was
answer in one go, but still.
Yeah, I always believe that Zengezur corridor is a PR issue, because Prime Minister Pashinyan needed something like that in the end of the 2020, because when he was blamed that he lost Karabakh to Azerbaijan, he would say that back then the political context in Armenia back then, it was that he would say that, okay, Karabakh internationally was not recognized as part of Armenia, it was part of Azerbaijan, so that's why we could not defend it. But Zengezur is something that we own, everybody recognizes that this is ours, so we are not going to step back, we are going to fight for this case, etc. So that is why I believe that as a result of this PR move, he kind of created a certain obstacles for the implementation of the Zengezur corridor. So that is, I don't see any big problem for implementation of Zengezur corridor, because what Azerbaijan wants, it's the, like that once you want to build something bigger, like a middle corridor, you want certain liberal rules for transporting certain goods, and that you don't want any obstacles on the route, so that people, investors can trust and then want to be part of this initiative. So that is why certain degree of the, the passage rules being slightly, let's call them liberal rules, right? Like I just already mentioned, like being with the less restrictions.
Yes.
That might help to build more effective middle corridor. That might help to build a more secure region. So I believe that if we move like that, again, for me, Zengezur corridor is a PR issue.
And American involvement, will they remain proactive, you think? Because you said that the meeting, which is going to take place tomorrow, is the beginning of a long process.
Yeah.
So will they remain proactive, or what will be the Russian reaction, perhaps?
Absolutely. I believe that the Americans did that something similar in May 2023, if I'm not mistaken. So it was
crucial.
Yes.
4-day meeting.
Absolutely. So there was when there were problems on the EU-led platform, Americans would step in and then.
That was exactly just before, a couple of days before, for the first time, Prime Minister Pashinyan, in his statement, recognized Azerbaijan's territorial integrity within the exact 86,000 square kilometers. You remember the exact figure was mentioned in May 2023, and before that there was a 4-day meeting.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we saw that, and once they are part of the process, they are super dedicated, and I believe that President Trump, like that, we are witnessing that once he is focused on certain issue, the whole team is focused on one particular issue, right? The whole attention of the administration is on one issue. That's how it works in the White House under President Trump. So I believe that now this issue might be quite important for the internal audience in the United States also. So I believe that the American diplomats are going to be very dedicated to the process, and I believe that we should.
But the meeting is bilateral and the process is bilateral.
Of course. But no, I don't think that Azerbaijan and Armenia would want to change that format because that format was quite productive.
It's been there since December 2023.
Yeah, and that format was quite productive, right? Yeah. So it means that, and the thing is, once you do some meeting on the auspices of one party, then the other parties want to host you in their own platform also, right? That was the rule before September 2023. So like once you visit Washington,
you remember the competitions of the platforms.
Yes, you invited to Sochi.
Meeting in Prague and then in Sochi.
Sochi, then you Brussels, etc., etc. So I believe that Armenia and Azerbaijan, they are quite happy to have bilateral format. But if they see that there is a certain constructive involvement from third parties, why not?
Thank you, thank you very much for your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, the meeting in Abu Dhabi may or may not deliver an immediate breakthrough, but is undeniably a step in a larger process. And as my guest today, Ahmad Alili, Director of the Caucasus Policy Analysis Center, mentioned, it could be the beginning of a qualitatively new process. You've been watching Context, and see you very soon indeed.